Brendan, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Ren?
I'm good. Thanks for joining me on Dads with Mikes today. I'm excited to have you.
Likewise, likewise. I'm happy to be
Brendan, tell me a little bit about yourself. What's your situation right now? You don't have kids, right?
correct. I am a dad to be. My wife's due September the 8th. I'm 26 years old and I work in tech. I'm a data scientist. And we are living in good old New York City. So we're seeing, the whole political climate, we're definitely seeing that firsthand. My wife is in medical school at Mount Sinai. And so we're just navigating parenthood and in a metropolitan setting.
Sounds good. 26 years old. What made you want to have kids at this point in time in your life? Was that something you always knew? Mid 20s, that's when I want to have kids, or like a year ago, or
Mhm.
whenever you guys decided, now's the time?
Yeah. I think when I was younger, my parents had me when they were around 28. My mom was like 27, 28, and my dad was 30. And even amongst my friends when I was younger, their parents were a lot older. So like they were having kids in their mid 30s, late 30s sometimes. And so I always viewed my parents as being quote unquote young. And I also wanted to be a young dad so I could have the energy to run around, play with them, that type of thing. And so when I met my wife and we got married, we got married in July of 2022, and we we're like, let's just do it. We're married, we both have jobs, we can support a kid, so like why not just take the leap of faith and jump in? But I will say it's definitely been novel because none of my friends are married. None of my friends are married, and only one of my wife's friends are married, and so we're definitely in novel territory amongst our friend group. So that's been really interesting to navigate. But yeah.
According to your friends, are you doing this too soon, or are they supporting you?
My friends are definitely supportive. They've definitely been vocal, and they couldn't do what I do, but they're excited. Told them all. The gender's a boy. We're having a son. So they're all excited. They're all excited about that. So definitely blessed to have really supportive friends, and also there's really supportive family too. Yeah.
Well, congratulations, first of all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That's really awesome. Did you and your wife always know you wanted kids, or is it something that you told each other? Well,
Mm-hmm.
let's just see when the time comes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We both knew. My wife is an only child between her parents, and I'm one of four. So I'm the oldest of four kids. And when we came to like, when we started dating seriously and for marriage and everything like that, we both had the conversation. We both wanted a bunch of kids. So um, we can start now than wait later. Yes. Yeah. But definitely want a gaggle of kids having them run around. It was definitely my mom had four kids in 5 years. So in 1997, 1998, 2000, and 2002. And back then I was a C-section. So back then they recommended parents to keep getting the C-section after the first C-section. So she just had them back to back to back. Massive sacrifice on her end, which I'm really grateful for. But it made it so that all of the four of us are friends, which is nice. Like we're all close. Like my youngest sibling is like 20, was she 21, 22, something like that, and I'm 26. So it's really nice, Like I have like inherently like three close friends who've known me since I can remember. So really good.
Awesome. You said, when is your wife due again?
September the 8th. So she'll be in her third trimester during the summer, which we've heard is notoriously the worst season to be third trimester in. So we'll see how that goes.
I didn't hear that one. Why?
Apparently the heat makes things harder for women in the third trimester. I have no idea, but that's what I've heard. And she has a bunch of parenting Reddit threads that she follows, and she's seen that.
I don't know how much value I'd put in Reddit posts to be.
Fair enough. Yeah, that is definitely fair enough. Yeah.
I don't know. And look, if that's one thing that I can already advise, if I may, it's not to put too much weight into what you and your wife will find online. It's
Mhm,
definitely good to look into it
mhm,
and to research it, but you know, everybody lives through it differently. So by all means, join communities, talk online, talk to your friends, talk to your family. But everybody's gonna have an opinion,
right.
and everybody's gonna have a story of how they experienced it and what they went through.
Mhm,
And most of the time, the experiences they vary, and
mhm,
yours will too. I mean, obviously, you'll have similarities, you know, but I think every experience is unique as well in its own special way.
mhm.
So
100%.
keep that in mind. So this is a special episode, Brendan, because you're obviously not a dad yet, but that's fine. You still have a mic, so you meet half the criteria. But look, you're soon to be dad, and so that's good enough for me. So I understand that you have a whole bunch of questions for me. Are you nervous at all?
I'm not nervous that I won't be a good dad. I guess the nerves come from this being my first kid and being the first of my friends to have a first kid. The nervousness is just charting the unknown in the first place. I'll say that. Yeah, that's the main nerves being in an unknown spot.
Does
Yeah,
that scare you?
it honestly gets it's honestly exciting. So we were the first to get married amongst all of our friends, and that was exciting. And I was really happy to do it, and it wasn't nerve wracking, really, but it was more like excitement to like see what's behind, like see what's behind the bush, essentially. So like oh like what is that? Like I'm just more curious and excited than and I guess slightly nervous, but it doesn't scare me at all. No. Yeah.
Okay, great.
It's just kind of hard to be scared just because it's just what a blessing family is. Just when you have them as like a net, as like a safety net, nothing, not that nothing can go wrong, but like nothing, I feel like nothing can go terribly wrong.
That's great. You seem to have a positive mindset.
I definitely try to. Yeah.
What have you been doing to prepare for fatherhood?
One, working out. I want to make sure that I'm able to be fit enough to keep up with the kid and the toddling in their toddler phases. Um, Two, like I mentioned, Ariana and I are both Christian. Oh, my wife's name is Ariana. Both Ariana and I are both Christian, and so staying prayed up and making sure that we have the proper prayer and fellowship life to pass on those values to him. And then third is just working hard at my job and maintaining financial stability. Um, and then fourth, really, it was the reason why I reached out to you is, in addition to my dad and Ariana's dad, reaching out to other dads who have kids during these times to pick their brain and get their advice on how it's going raising a Gen Alpha or Gen Z kid. Yeah.
You mentioned you live in New York City now. Is that like right in the city or you're one of the
Yeah, so we
boroughs?
both live in Harlem. Yeah, so we have an apartment in Harlem. So that's like northern Manhattan. So probably like 40 blocks above Central Park.
Is that where you see yourself long term?
Oh no, we definitely want to move back to the Maryland area. Background is my wife and I are from a town called Upper Marlboro, Maryland, which is in a county called Prince George's County, which is right outside of DC. Um, and we didn't know each other before high school, but we both ended up going to the same school in DC for high school. And I had a massive crush on her, but she didn't like me back. Um, Fair enough, But and then we eventually both went on to different colleges, and then once we both graduated, we reconnected and started dating, and then so that happened in October of 2019, and then COVID hit March 2020, so we were able to quarantine together back in Maryland, and it turns out that our parents live 10 minutes from each other, so we were able to just kind of quarantine together, and she got to know my parents and I got to know her parents, which is really, really nice. And so we eventually want to go back to the Maryland area once she finishes her program, I would say.
Okay, so your parents and her parents are back in Maryland. Is that
Yep.
correct? Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Is that taken into consideration when you mentioned that you want to go back to have that support that
100%. 100%. Yeah, that's the main reason of why we want to go back to be able to have that support because like we live in New York, but both of our parents are in Maryland and are 10 minutes away from each other. So it's kind of like that's the best place to be when you have a young kid, you know? And so it'll be cool to bring them to bring the baby boy back there at some point just so he can know where his parents grew up and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
good move and good thinking because having the grandparents around and
Hmm.
in your case, both sets of grandparents
Yeah.
is going to be so, well, first of all, helpful to you and your wife, and also for the kid, for your boy.
Hmm.
He's going to be so loved and surrounded by so much family.
Hmm.
Look, he's going to be one spoiled kid.
Yeah, we've actually talked about that because having so many grandparents close could make them be spoiled. We've got like jokingly, we've been brainstorming ways in which we can mitigate against that. No firm solutions as of yet, but we'll take it as we build it.
I like how you guys are already discussing this.
Yeah, yeah, we try to make sure that we have things laid out. It helps. My wife is really type A, and so she'll bring up these really future oriented questions and force me to think about them. And it turned into we have a bunch of board game nights, and so we'll have these conversations while we're playing board games, and then it turns into really fruitful combo. Yeah.
How much are you and your wife on the same page when it comes to the values that you'll be transferring to your son? How you're going to discipline your son, punishments or not, or positive
Yeah.
reinforcement. In terms of religion, you mentioned you're both Christian, so that you're covered. That's
Yeah.
good. That's good. It's not necessary to be both of the same religion, but it helps. Let's not
Hmm.
lie to each other.
Hmm.
100% honest. It's ideal.
Hmm.
So that's great. But for everything else, are you on the same page?
You mentioned punishment, so we can take punishment first. Um, as far as punishment, we both are on the same page. I don't think that we want to hit our kids or like corporal punishment. I don't think that it is morally wrong to. I think we are just going to choose to not. And then as far as values, like you said, it's pretty easy because we're both Christian. And so I think as far as values, because we're both Christian, we want to make sure that our son knows that the spirit that raised Jesus from the dead actually lives in them, in him. And so we want to make sure that our son's actions come from that source. And so that's the main value. And then as far as like education goes and things like that, um, my wife loved school and was really, 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 really into school. And so we talked about like, oh, like how are we going to? And I would say that I like school, but not as much as her. I'll say that. Um, and so we talked about like, oh, like do we care if our kid isn't that much into school, or oh, do we care if they're into sports a lot, or oh, like my wife does brain science research, and so one thing we talk about is like, what if our kid wants to play tackle football? Like, what are we gonna do there? Like, she's nervous about traumatic brain injury and CTE and concussions and all of these things. So we have gotten down to that grain of detail. Long story short, she does not want to play football at all. I've I've submitted to that. I don't think that I'm pressed to make my son play football. Um, but yeah, we've talked about the whole gambit during those board game nights. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I see you've already compromised the football thing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah. To me, it's not that it's not worth it, but I trust her science knowledge more than my any. I'm not even that pressed to have him play football for real. I only played a couple seasons, so it's not like I don't live and breathe it.
Okay, that's good, man. Look, if it's not that important to you and but you know that it's very much important to her, then
Right.
Solid husband move there, man. I commend you on that.
Thanks. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
As a soon-to-be father, what's the number one thing that you want to work on from now until your son is born?
One thing that I learned and admired from my dad, and something that I looked for in him, was a really high stress tolerance. So when things got stressful, I could look to my dad for validation, and if he seems calm, then everything is going to be okay. So I think that the main mental thing that I'm working on is increasing my stress tolerance. I don't think that it's low, but I want to make sure that my son can look at me and tell by how I'm behaving and my actions and my tone of voice that I believe that we have it under control and that everything is going to be okay. Not that we're going to get the outcomes that we want always, that um but that like que sera, sera, like what's going to happen, what's what's going to be. I want to make sure that I'm able to, you know, have my son believe that in me, just like I did for my dad. And so the way that I'm doing that is disciplining myself to do the things that I say I'm going to do. So if I said when I got up this morning I was going to go to the gym today, actually go. Because then, in my opinion, when there's a discord between your words and your actions, it's almost like you're living in a lie. And then if like you're basically living two lives, which I can see causing anxiety. But if you're completely congruent in your words and actions, you're fully integrated. And if you're fully integrated, that means, in my opinion, that you have a firm cognitive foundation. And so other people can trust in you and on you mentally and physically. And so as long as I'm able to do that, is have a one-to-one relationship between my words and my actions, um, and be calm and cool. I think that's the main mental model that I've been working on throughout my wife's pregnancy period.
Awesome. How often do you work out now?
Probably like three. I lift weights probably like three, maybe four times a week, 3 to 4 times a week. Um, and then I it's not really cardio. We have a dog, and so I'll walk my dog once in the morning and once in the afternoon, and I call that cardio. But I'm not sweating and my heart rate isn't high, so it's not really cardio. It's more like my feet are moving, like a walk through the mall.
Getting your 10,000 steps?
Yeah, exactly. More like 6,000, but not. Eventually, that's the final goal.
Well, my advice to you is to keep it up as much as you can once your son is born.
Mm-hmm.
You might not be able to do 3 or 4 times a week once he is. Your
Mm-hmm.
priority at the time will be your wife, first of
Mm-hmm.
all, and then your son,
Mm-hmm.
because your wife will be taking care of your son
Right.
probably like 90% of the time.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Uh, so you need to be watching out for her,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
making sure that she's well fed, that
Mm-hmm.
she's resting. If she needs to hop in the shower, you take over with the kid,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. But you'll need your rest as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that might mean lowering the frequency of your workouts.
Mm-hmm.
Going to the gym might not be possible every day. Well, I mean, you're not
Right.
going every day now anyway, but
Mm-hmm.
you'll see how it goes. You'll see if you're able to do 20-minute workouts, then that's great.
Right.
You might not need, well, if you want to keep a minimum of fitness, then an hour workout when you have a newborn at home might not be possible.
Right.
But you do want to keep doing it at least at a minimum
Mm-hmm.
as much as you can,
Mm-hmm.
while not forgetting about getting enough rest because you will
Right.
need your rest.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that? Is that something that's you think would bother you that, oh man, I haven't gone to the gym as much as I wanted to this week?
It's funny. I've thought about that a lot, and my I got into the gym because my dad had like the Arnold Schwarzenegger blueprint of how he won Mr. Olympia. He had like that massive textbook in our garage. And I was like looking at it and it seemed kind of cool. My dad had like weightlifting equipment. And so I got involved that way. But I've been on and off since I was 14. And I don't like, for example, I've gone like multiple weeks not going to the gym, and it doesn't emotionally upset me at all. So that's something that I'm not necessarily worried about. Like if there's a period of a month where I can't go, I don't think that I'll be emotionally disturbed um, that much. Yeah, because I've done it before.
Well, I wouldn't stop altogether.
Mm-hmm.
My advice again would be to keep it up at least to a minimum, at least two
Mm-hmm.
or three times a week. But it might not be an hour long workout. Like I said, it might be
Right.
20 minutes, might be 30. I don't know. It depends, where your gym is, how far is it from your home,
A
that
really
sort of thing.
intense 20 minutes that could be done. Yeah.
Yeah. So, because look, it's not only going to keep you in shape to maintain the physique that you've achieved now, but it's also going to be good for you energy wise. And you're going
Mm-hmm.
to need a ton of that.
Right. Right.
And it's also going to be good for your own well-being. Okay. We all know that the benefits of exercising, it's not only good physically, but it's great for you mentally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to need to be at the top of your game when you
Mm-hmm.
have a child. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely do not cut it out completely, would be my advice to you. Do
Mm-hmm.
do the minimum that you can. And look, if it's just walking every day, then at least you went out, you got some fresh air. I don't know how
Right.
fresh it is in New York City, but
You're right. That's the thing. That is the thing. It's definitely not fresh air, but it is air. I'll
it's
say.
it's air and there is sunlight, right? You do get some sun,
Hmm.
good old vitamin D,
Yes.
very very important.
Yes.
Brendan, let me know. I know you have some questions for me, and look, I'm no expert by any means,
Hmm.
but I do have experience, short experience. My kids are young, they're 6 and 4 years old,
Hmm.
so I haven't been in that for that long. But what's good about that is that newborns are not that far in the past for me. So I do
Hmm.
remember what it means to be a new dad, and that those first couple of years are still fresh in my mind. So
Awesome.
fire away with your questions, my friend.
So with because your oldest is the boy, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So with your 6-year-old, I was curious before you had your first kid, how you balanced work. Because I saw in your Twitter profile, you're a banker. How you balanced your profession as a banker with quality time with your wife before and after your son was born? That was my first question.
Yeah. So before he was born, look, we would go out regularly, in the form of going out to dinner, taking walks together, going on hikes, uh, that sort of thing. And with my job, look, it's a 9 to 5 type of deal, Monday to Friday. So, evenings or weekends, that's usually how what it looked like. After my son was born, look, it didn't happen uh much at all. If I can say that it happened, I don't think it, especially for those first few months, we did
Mm-hmm.
not, I don't think we went out. And it's not that we didn't want to, but just the energy wasn't there,
Mm-hmm.
especially for my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Because her energy was 100% devoted to our son, which is normal, by the way. And that's one thing that I hear a lot of new dads complain about is how it affects the relationship once you have a newborn. I've seen on Reddit and Facebook and all those social media. It's baffling to me. There's so many fathers out there, new fathers complaining the first few months and the first year. Things like, "Oh, my wife doesn't pay attention to me anymore. I don't remember the last time we had sex. Um, we don't go out anymore. She doesn't seem interested in me anymore. She doesn't seem to care about me anymore." Which are false things, but I understand how they get that perception. Okay, it might
Mm-hmm.
seem that way because like I said, her focus is entirely on the newborn, and it's not easy. And it's really not easy for women, uh, you know, to go through, first of all, being pregnant, then going through, the whole pregnancy, and then giving birth, and then after that, the recovery again takes time.
Mhm.
So she's obviously not in, she's not herself the first few months. Okay. And I think a lot of dads should, well, a lot of soon to be dads should expect that. Her energy's not going to be the same. She's not going to be sleeping the same way that she was sleeping before. And my wife, it affected her a lot. And another
Mhm.
thing that, soon to be dads need to look out for is postpartum depression. That's something that happens a lot more than people might think. It's a lot more common than people
Mhm.
might think. And
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that my wife had some form of that. So it could be baby blues, it could have been postpartum depression. And I suggest that you look into it, at least to get familiar with it and to recognize the symptoms and the
Mhm.
warning signals, because once it does happen, it needs to be dealt with. She needs to talk to her doctor and to get help because it's serious. So it's
Mhm.
not to be taken lightly by any means. So yeah, going back to my wife, it definitely she definitely got some form of it, and she didn't go see her doctor. So that's why I'm saying if you notice that her mood is often low
Mhm.
and that she seems depressed to you or disengaged, it might be something to look out for. So just
Mhm.
something to, to keep in mind.
Mhm.
So my wife didn't look for help when this happened, when she went through this. And obviously it affected the relationship, but not to the point where I was complaining or asking myself questions like, does she still love me? Like, what's going on?
Mhm.
We got this kid and now she doesn't care about me anymore. What's going on? It wasn't like that at all to me. I guess it came naturally to me to know that, look, it's not easy. So this is normal. It'll pass.
Mhm.
But yeah, to go back to your question, obviously the first few months we didn't date,
Mhm.
but it doesn't mean that we didn't care for each other. We were still
Mhm.
going through this together. Having a 9 to 5, it was easy leaving the office and going back home to my wife in the evenings. The weekends we spent together, obviously. But the dating life was definitely affected at least the first few months, if not the first year. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear all that?
Yeah, it's something that Ariana and I have talked about as far as like postpartum depression and the signs to look out for. And if it lasts longer than like 6 weeks, like we'll have a deeper conversation about it. We've definitely had those conversations before, and I'll definitely keep an eye on her behavior. Um, we've also had the conversation of hearing other parents, other millennial parents on other podcasts talk about how the husband will kind of get jealous or be kind of despondent or sad because the wife has to pay attention to the kid all the time. And so in that, now my mind is primed for when my son comes. Ariana will have to spend the majority of the time with my son, not me. And that's because if she doesn't and I'm working, then the boy will die essentially. Like there's no other option, you know. And so it's not like it's this much more fun thing that you get to do, and it's selfishly taken away from me time. This is what has to happen to make sure that our kid is well fed, well nourished, well cleaned, and well emotionally taken care of. You know, like I don't view it as there's another option because this is the only thing that has to be done unless we want our son to come out not well during those first few months. So we definitely come to grips with that. Once we found out that she was pregnant, we had that conversation too.
And look, in terms of dating, you could just shift the format, or transform it into she comes out of the shower and you've got this dinner ready for her.
Right.
It'd be a nice little surprise for her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you
Mm-hmm.
can have, and let's say that your son is sleeping. You've got
Right.
at least an hour
Right.
maybe an hour.
Right, if that.
He enjoyed his dinner, light a candle. I mean, yes, you're still home in your apartment, but let's make this work. It could
Hmm.
still be special. You could still have a conversation with her.
Hmm.
You could still watch a show together that you both enjoy,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
So you're just gonna have to change the format.
Hmm.
But it's so it might not look like dinner and a movie first
Hmm.
couple of weeks. Obviously not.
Hmm.
But you could, you know, be creative, be supportive, and cook for her. Or if you're not much of a cook, get some catering or anything or some takeout
Hmm.
and just like make it look nice and light a
Right.
candle and dim the lights and just make it a little special evening together.
Hmm.
You
There's
know, things.
definitely a lot of takeout options in New York, so I can just order something in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What else you got for me, man?
My other question was now that you have two kids, how have you and your wife how have you and your wife pursued kind of community with other families? Like, is there like a certain thought out process that y'all went to get that, or is it embedded? Like, y'all have cousins or stuff that have kids. Like, how did y'all reach out to other families to whether it's getting play dates or having family picnics or get-togethers? How did y'all go about that?
Yeah, great question. We were kind of lucky in that sense because my older sister was pregnant at the same time as my wife was
Mm-hmm. Oh
for
wow.
for yeah, for our first kid. And so my son and my nephew are the same age. They're both boys and they're the
Mm-hmm.
same age. And so my wife and my sister both went through pregnancy and then birth and everything else at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So that was fun for them, and they had each other to talk to and compare notes and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so once they were born, obviously, not with the babies, but when when they grew up, then we would get together a lot, almost every weekend, if not every weekend, because we're a pretty close family.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister lives about 20 minutes away from us.
Oh wow, awesome.
Yeah, so play dates, yeah, obviously every weekend, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one part of it. Another, and this came later because my wife and I both work.
Mm-hmm.
And after for 12 months, for our first child, she took 12 months of maternity leave.
Mm-hmm.
We have that here in Quebec and Canada that it's pretty good in that sense. You can get that much time off. I don't know what it looks like in the States,
Mm-hmm.
but here in Canada, you get up to 12 months, and now it's 18 actually.
Wow.
It's gone up since then. But for our first child, she took her 12 months of mat leave, and then after that, well, we were lucky. My parents are also not too far from where we are, like 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so for when my wife had to go back to work after a year, my parents looked after our son
Mm-hmm.
for about 6 months.
Wow.
So right up until he was 18 months old. And
Mm-hmm.
then that's when we transitioned him to start daycare. And that's when, you know, he started making friends at daycare. And as he got like 3 or 4 years old, they started inviting each other. The parents would invite each other to the kids' birthday parties.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we met a lot of parents uh,
Okay.
in our age group and who had kids in
Mhm.
our son's age.
Right.
So that was a huge part of building a community. And we were lucky because all the parents in that class and in our son's class were like super friendly and
Mm-hmm.
inviting us to everything. And you really felt like you were part of a small community in our area.
Mm-hmm.
So we started, inviting everybody to birthday parties and just doing outings with the kids, like apple picking and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that we were lucky in that sense that we had my
Hmm.
sister with my nephew, and also
Yeah.
the parents from daycare and now school because now my son is 6 years old, so
Hmm.
he's in kindergarten now, and
Hmm.
same thing. He started making friends, and we met their parents. So
Hmm.
that's how we know and talk to parents that are going through the same thing as us, basically. Is that
Okay.
something you're looking into? Do you know? I know you mentioned you're between you and your friends, you're the only one or the first ones that are going to have a child. So
Yeah,
what are you
and that was
looking?
my motivation for joining Twitter actually, because I would want community with other parents who are around my age or who are willing to support and help. I get some of that through my church community, but I figured, with Twitter, I can have access to people like you, people like Ben Black we talked about, and other fathers and other families virtually. And so this exact question was the impetus for the Twitter community that I started, which is kind of getting Christian parents involved and just getting them talking to each other to see how, if they want to do like a virtual play date or, oh, you know, Manhattan has like 5 million people here. Like maybe we want to go out like on a group play date to Central Park and like bring some sparkling cider and we can drink cider while the 18-month olds play on the picnic blanket, things like that. Um, yeah, so I'm definitely looking for that. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, and you know what? Look, uh, for me, I do have, the parents that I know through school or daycare right now.
Hmm.
But the reason I created an X account and started engaging with other dad accounts is because the conversation in real life, for some reason, and I talk about this a lot. I think it's in my profile, and the whole idea behind Dads with Mics is to talk about the real stuff beyond the cliches that you hear when I just mentioned birthday parties. What you hear at those birthday parties is between the dads is a lot of complaining.
Hmm.
A lot of the cliches like, yeah, I haven't slept since my first son was born.
Hmm. Hmm.
Things like that aren't helpful, and
Right.
you could
Hmm.
argue, some people might argue, oh, it's just humor.
Hmm.
It's not even funny. It's
Hmm.
old. And I got tired of that. It's the same stuff over and over again, complaining about their wives, complaining about their kids,
Hmm.
complaining about how they haven't gone out for a beer with their friends in
Hmm.
ages,
Hmm.
complaining about how they don't have the time or energy to work out.
Hmm.
So I got tired of that, and that's why I started looking towards the online community.
Hmm.
And you mentioned your church, and that's great because, yes, online is great, but the in person is, almost it's really important.
Hmm.
So if that's something that you can get somehow through your church community, that would be awesome. On top of
Hmm.
the online, because in person you get a lot more of a discourse and dialogue with like-minded individuals, but in person it creates that warmth that you might not get as much online. You know what I mean?
Hmm. 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 Right. Nothing like seeing someone face to face. Yeah.
Yeah. Which isn't to say, look, online, I've met some amazing people so far.
Hmm.
Uh, and, some guys that I cannot call friends. And because I've shared stuff with you just tonight that I don't even think I spoke to some of my friends about.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
that's amazing. So that
Wow.
part is like really incredible. And
Right.
it's so it builds a connection with people that you just met, but you've got so much in common, and we're all people just trying to get better and improve ourselves, and surround ourselves with people that are like us and going through the same things and that want to get better.
Hmm.
And that
Hmm.
was a reason for me to go online because I wasn't getting that in real life.
Thank you for sharing that. It's motivating for me because it sounds like it sounds like what you're describing is is pursuing community too, and not only that, like going and doing that so that you get a community around you to help your mental health and help be a better dad. Hence, dads with mics, you know.
That's right.
And then my other question was because, and it's perfect because you have kids of different genders. I was curious about how you thought about raising your son differently than how you thought about raising your daughter, and um, differences, differences that you and your wife wanted to instantiate maybe in raising, or how you've noticed like certain biases that you have for one versus the other when they do certain behaviors. I'd love to hear kind of what you've noticed in yourself being a parent with two kids of different genders.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great question again. My wife and I are very much so we're very much traditional
Mm-hmm.
in terms of gender roles.
Mm-hmm.
So the way and this does it's not even something that I set out to do. It just sort of happened that way, but the way I am with my son is not the same way that I am with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
The way you raise your son and the way you raise your daughter to me are not the same. It's not the same approach. Give you an example. I roughhouse with my son pretty regularly,
Mm-hmm.
if not every day. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just instinct. I don't even make it a point to do that. It just
Mm-hmm.
sort of happens.
Mm-hmm.
Do I do that with my daughter? No. And I think it's just the way we are as males.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we want to raise our sons to be as tough and resilient as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just sort of like this, it's not a rivalry, but it's, we're the two men of the house, right? And
Right.
and you want to mold him into that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where that instinct comes from
Mm-hmm.
to just grab him and like pretend to pile drive him on the couch.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I don't want to do that to my daughter, which
Right.
isn't to say that I don't want her to grow up to be tough, not, that's to the contrary, actually. I want her especially to be tough. But the way I go about it is very different than I do with my son.
Mm-hmm.
So with my daughter, we'll be talking to her, and look, she's only 4 years old. But anytime that something happens, let's say at daycare in her class with other kids, some other kid grabbed a toy from her,
Mm-hmm.
we'll tell her, well, don't just let them take it away from you. Okay, grab it back and say, hey, I was playing with that. We
Mm-hmm.
tell her, stand up for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because we noticed, well, at first we noticed that she had a tendency to just sort of let it go and she would just go pick up another toy,
Mm-hmm.
which in a way is fine. It's great. It kind of shows like it's kind of like she doesn't care. So, okay, fine. She took
Mm-hmm.
my toy. I'll just go grab another one. There's like a ton of toys in here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we didn't want her to grow into a pushover.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want that for your kids, whether it's a boy or girl.
Mm-hmm.
So for some things, you want them both to be the same. You want them to be tough. You want them to stand up for themselves. But the approach is just different, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, I don't think I've ever said to my daughter so far to hit another kid, but I think I did. I think I told my son, and
Yeah.
look, I admit it's not the greatest thing to say, but I think I said something like, "Hey, listen, if a kid pushes you, push him right back."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And to some people, they might say, you know what? No, he shouldn't push back. He should tell that kid to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then if he doesn't stop, go talk to a teacher, which I understand. But for me, again, it's about being tough and not taking shit from anyone
Mm-hmm.
and standing up for yourself. So in the
Mm-hmm.
moment, like I don't know where the teach this is, going on at recess, and who knows where the teacher is. She's off somewhere. She can't supervise all the kids
Right.
in the playground. So by the time he goes over there, the kid might be grabbing him or punching him or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So he's gotta stand up for himself. He's got to be able to defend himself. So why haven't I said that to my daughter? Again, it goes with instinct. I think with my daughter, I'd say, you know what? Push her off and then tell that kid to stop and go see a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want my daughter to get in a fight, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that says something about it's the father-daughter relationship, man. She's my princess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you're ever blessed with the girl, um, look, it's so special. Which isn't to say that a father-son relationship is not special because it is. It's just different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the way you go about raising your daughter, it's different than how you raise your son.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's not gonna look the same. And you don't even have to set out to be a specific way. It's just going to come naturally,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you have traditional values, which I'm getting the sense that you do. It's just gonna come out that way. Brendan, let us know where can people find you on X. So what's your tag?
So the community that we're starting is called Defend All Kids, and so our Twitter handle is just defend underscore all underscore kids. Defend all kids.